Hey, folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me at the art table again today. I'm here with my buddy Narwhal, and I want to talk a little bit about his upcoming project. He's working on a kid's book called Cerberus that looks very interesting. In the spirit of full disclosure, I have worked with Narwhal before, and so he and I know each other. We're used to working with each other. Just something to think about as we're talking about this. Anyway, Narwhal, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your project.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to chat with you always. And yeah, so I'm comic skate artist, kind of been around since the beginning. My first book on the scene was Earthbound, and I'm still working on Earthbound 3, but in the meantime I've been doing these side projects. And actually after from Earthbound for me was successful to my scale. Like it was life-changing, but it wasn't like six figures or anything, but it because it did pretty good. I went part-time at the day job. I was working at a Fred Meyer deli, and that's kind of part of the Narwhal lore or whatever. But then it was doing good enough that I had another script, and it was Cerberus. So it was written a long time ago when I was 30. I'm 37 now. Cerberus was kind of written, and I was like, "Ooh, I can do this as a comic." But at that point, I didn't really have a budget, and I was thinking like, "Oh, maybe just the reputation of having one successful book, I can collaborate, and then we'll split." But that I had a few tests with that, but it wasn't really working, and it's hard to find people. And it is, I've kind of learned it's best like if you can. Obviously, it's like a little bit of a privilege or whatever, but if you have funds to produce some of these books, it's good to just have the funds ready and pay your collaborators so that you're kind of the boss. And so that kind of it like simplifies a lot of that kind of stuff rather than feeling around of if you're splitting ownership or all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so Cerberus, it kind of was here and there. It's had multiple false starts where I've tried to draw it, thought about it. And then I think it was because of Earthbound 2 was successful enough to give me a budget where I could actually just hire an artist. So then the question of finding the artist, and some of this might be some of your later questions, but I'll go over just quickly, is through Vaughn. He was friends with Monica McCagney, who had drawn Monster MD for him. And it kind of, you don't want to poach each other's artists, but so I was kind of tiptoeing around it. And I kind of almost asked him at one point, I was like, is it okay if I used her too? And he's like, yeah, I actually don't use her all the time, so it'd be good for her to have more work available, people wanting to work her, especially when I'm not working with her. And so he was in a lull of not hiring her. So I reached out and she was available. And I can possibly go into more of that later, but that's kind of like the interesting thing about Cerberus is it kind of was around from the beginning. I was trying to get it going, and it only later did that kind of become a thing. And then from there even is another process where it takes like a year or two. Monica's turning in art, I'm coloring it, I'm getting it lettered, that kind of stuff. So now it's finally ready and it will be launched soon. And I actually worked with some voice actors to do the beginning of the script to use for the trailer. So it'll be a cool trailer, I think. So that'll be fun.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. That's pretty interesting. I didn't realize Cerberus was such an old script. Yeah. So where did you where do you get the inspiration for Cerberus? What kind
Yeah.
of
So
what kind of a story is it, and where did that come from?
yeah, good question. I think like there was a joke version of it where so you can almost pitch it as like reverse John Wick, where the if it John Wick, his dog dies and he gets revenge. What if he died and the dog got revenge? Although if you do that, you picture a dog like maybe doing kung fu and killing gangsters and guns, bullets flying everywhere. Cerberus isn't like that. It's actually more like then it's like Scooby Doo or whatever. It's like a murder mystery kind of thing with talking animals. It's actually kind of like 101 Dalmatians, that kind of universe, that world. Those rules where like animals can talk and they can talk to each other, and humans can talk, and animals can kind of understand humans, but they can't talk to humans. That's like the basic world rules. But in college, I had a buddy, we were in a band together, and he's very creative. He's almost like a poet. His name's Caleb. And we're still in touch. He's a good guy. He lives in Tennessee, I think. And but I haven't visited him. I want to visit him sooner or later. But anyway, he was like a creative guy. So we would spitball just joking ideas. And one of them was this like dog. I think it was a seeing eye dog where its blind owner gets killed and then it goes on a quest for revenge. And we had some like stuff where like it needs to get across country to commit the revenge. So it finds a homeless guy who has a sign for like LA because that's where it needs to go, and it barks at him until he drops the sign and runs away, and then it picks up the sign and holds it, and then someone like picks it up and starts taking it. So like we had all these joke ideas, and I think we thought through almost the whole script, but I'd kind of forgotten it. And it wasn't a script, it was just an idea, but there was like minutes and minutes of trying to tell, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. But I kind of forgot it. And then for some reason, yeah, like I turned 30, I had written Earthbound. I'd written Foreign Agent, but I hadn't written anything after that. And somehow I got kind of the spark of inspiration of like, there's a way you could do that, take it kind of seriously and have it be kind of a fun animal adventure. And from there was pretty much kind of how it started. And it did go pretty smoothly, as I remember. I'm trying to remember. I think it, any kind of writing process for me, a lot of times it is like the redrafts help a lot. So like if you get, like you get to the first draft and you have something there, but you at least got to the end, luckily. Although I don't even always make it to the end, but it's redrafting is definitely where I get more and more zoned into the story and how I want it to be. And you get more like the structure kind of worked out. And so all that did kind of work out for Cerberus. So then I was sitting on that script where I was like, because sometimes I do this test, you might be able to relate to this, but like you wait 3 months and then you kind of take another look at it. And then you can see with fresher eyes of like, is it actually any good? And all through my 20s, like I didn't like anything that I had written. If you wait 3 months and read it again. But then it had got to that point where I was starting to like some of the stuff. And same with Cerberus. I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good. I like it. I wonder if I can try and get this into production somehow. So
yeah, I know that feeling of going back and looking at stuff. I definitely, I have a blog where I have published fiction off and on there for like the last 12 years, and I don't even want to go back and look at some of the early stuff on there because I just full body cringe just thinking about it.
I know, me too. I was thinking because I posted a funny tweet to me, funny, I don't know, on Twitter where I was like, does anyone have a crappy old script that they don't even care about that they'll sell me for cheap kind of thing? And I was thinking like, I have that. I could sell it to myself for free. And then I'd have what I'm supposedly asking for, these crappy old scripts that I don't care about. But I'm like, I really wouldn't do that to myself because I don't like them. I like cringe. I'm like, oh, they're unusable. Get them away from me.
Right. Yeah. No, even my last year, I guess more like a year and a half ago now, I wrote a thing and then I sat on it and I gave it to some beta readers and I revised it based on their feedback. And I was looking at it, I'm like, really, something's missing. And so then I gave it to a professional editor and I got her feedback on it. And I was like, man, I really need to restructure this. I want to adding almost 10,000 words to it. And then now I need to go back and like hammer at everything out so it all flows as a single story and work in some more of her notes. And it's such a slog for me because I go back and I look at it, I'm like, I know what I was trying to do here, but she's giving me all these notes that make it clear I didn't really achieve it. And I'm just like, now I got to change all this stuff. And it can be really hard to get through that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's easy, but it's like that. It's never easy on the first try. I'm pretty sure like that's usually just to get something to work with that you can kind of think about or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I know both of the projects we've worked together on, as we were working on them, sometimes it almost felt like we were going back and like pulling up half the stuff we put down so we could put, new stuff in place to make it fit with what we wanted to do later on.
And I like that way of working where it's kind of looser. We kind of have there's a little more improv to it almost feels as you're writing it, but then it doesn't always, you can get, then when you do that, you can get dead ends and stuff and everything.
Yeah, I think it does work a little bit better when you're collaborating with someone though, because you're not like when you finish the whole project on your own and then you start getting feedback on it from other people. It's almost like you've all of your mistakes have become so built into the foundation. You almost feel like you're you're writing a new story when you go back to make edits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it can be like, well, if I fix that, that breaks this. And if I fix that, that breaks this. So you end up and I'll do that too sometimes where if it's like that, I will redraft from page one. And some of it's the same, but I'll make sure I actually type it rather than copy paste it over or whatever. And then
Mhm.
yeah, that takes longer, but that'll give you the process of, yeah, you can change some little details as they come, and you can kind of remember and keep track of stuff a little better because you know what's going to happen or whatever.
Yeah. So you got some art you want to show us? Down here in this window, it looks like you got OBS up right now.
Yeah,
Okay, there we go. There we go. That looks nice.
Yeah, so this is the cover. Monica did this, and I think this was originally just kind of meant to be a promo piece, but I realized it's a perfect cover, and she left room at the top even for so she might have conceived of it as a cover. And then it's colored by my buddy Jared Jewell, who he's another collaborator who's a good guy who I have been friends with for a while, kind of outside of Comic Skate. And he's just been around, and I work with him here and there, but he's an animator, kind of trained jack of all trades, a bit of a musician too. And I started working with him coloring, and it was funny. He got better and better. Now I think he's better than me, and like I like his pages more than I like my pages because we both colored the book, But he colored a little more than me. But he colored this when the cover came. I got the art from Monica, and I'm like, I want to see your take on it. So, but together we kind of got this art direction style of kind of they're a little bit desaturated night shades. Kind of a lot of the book takes place at night.
Yeah.
Sort
I
of
like
a little bit low contrast, you might say, even some of it, but yeah.
Yeah. I like the lighting effects. I mean, you've got the owl eyes up here, and then kind of the dusk or night lights of a city in the background and the horizon there. Pretty nice. It gives the cover a lot of depth, even though it is, like you said, kind of desaturated.
Yeah, I've thought about the saturation and contrast, and I'm in a phase right now where I like low contrast. Although it's like you like them both, but low contrast is fun too. Like you can think of what that is. Like I guess that might be like a hazy sunset where the sun is almost blending into the sky, versus like what a full moon where it's like a white moon and a black sky. And like
Right.
they're both cool, and they both look different. They both like pull your eye kind of differently, or look different out of the corner of your eye, or attract your attention differently. But the low contrast usually will rely a little bit more on color, because it black like high contrast will read even without color, but you can get some cool low contrast differences with the color. And so this cover is kind of like that. And I tweaked it and messed with it too, and I end up undoing the tweaks a lot of times because I'm like, I just kind of like it. It's an opportunity too. I can pitch a little bit more of the story. It kind of gets into detail that could potentially be convoluted, but I'll mention quickly, like, the owl's eyes are glowing, the mouse Pete, his nose is glowing. The glowing, they represent a sense. So all the animals, they have heightened senses, some more than others, and
Mhm.
different senses are their specialty. And if they're kind of utilizing, it's almost like a superpower kind of within the rules of the universe. So the owl, his superpower is his eyesight, and the mouse, his superpower is his nose. So if they're using it, it'll glow. So you kind of know as you're reading the comic if they're kind of using this superpower. And like the nose, when I got into it, I was like, nose as a superpower, there's a lot that is its own little magic system that has its own logic that's kind of fun. Like the first thing Pete does is or Lee is the dog. First thing Lee does is take Pete to the crime scene and just sniff around, and they get like 3 imprints, like one from an animal, and like 2 or 4 imprints, 3 from humans. 2 of the humans they can match because they already have the imprints from around the house. So they know it's the 2 people who lived in the house, but one of the imprints they don't have a match for. So that's like he can sniff. If he ever matches that imprint, they would know it was the other human who was there that night when the murder happened. So that's kind of like their first lead, is they got Pete with they're like fingerprints, but he's like these scents basically that he can identify people with. And then the other thing that kind of came out from it is I realized each sense sort of almost represents a tense, or the three main like detective senses. So, and they go with like sayings or what you would like language even, but like eyesight is like what you see coming down the road. So eyesight is dealing with the future. Um, then the nose is what's happened in what the past, what was here. And then hearing is like kind of like the present. It's like what's happening now. And Lee's kind of best is he's a little bit of everything. They're almost like stats you could have in D&D, but he's a little more ears. And Pete is the mouse for the past, and Frank or the owl is the future he can see. And so the owl kind of gives a little bit of like a prophecy towards the beginning of the story, and that kind of plays out a
Okay.
little bit too.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So where did you get this logo? That's a pretty neat logo too. Did you
Yeah,
make that?
that was, and Jared helped me with it, but we were thinking what was like we were just kind of talking that I needed a logo, and I was thinking about trying to make it in 3D. And then Jared's like, well, Cerberus guards the gates of hell. So he drew the sketch of like this fence with Cerberus in the middle. And then I built the fence in 3D, and which you can't even tell by looking at it, but it actually is like built in 3D. And then
Interesting.
the Cerberus I just like drew, and it ended up when I did it loose, that ended up having the best feel, and kind of put it between the fences. And then when you put it up, that kind of helps the overall vibe too. When you look at the cover, you're like, oh, this is like, late 80s, early 90s animated kids adventure. And I'll say too, I guess I should say it's like a kids adventure because it's animals. But if it was rated, it would borderline be PG-13. But one way I'd pitch it is like this is like would be like a kid's story back when kids stories were kind of hardcore, like they could give kids nightmares. This is like
Yeah, more Don Bluth than modern day Disney.
yeah, totally.
Okay, okay. I dig it. I dig it. So, what was your process here? I know you've collaborated with artists in the past. Did you give your artist the full script to work off of, or did you just go a few pages at a time? Did you do thumbnails, or did you just have her send you whole pages?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I asked Monica because I hadn't really worked that much with other artists. I'd always worked with myself. Um, and if I'm doing it myself, I don't even format the script. I just read it as a movie kind of script, basically. Then I take that and I do thumbnails off of that. And that you put those together, that's kind of like a script. Then I know the page breaks, I know the panel breaks. But for working with Monica, I asked her like what does she prefer and like how did her and Vaughn work together? And she sent me a sample of Vaughn's one of the pages that he does, and he just does page and panel breakdowns as he goes. So it's like a script, but he's letting you know when the page and panel breakdowns are. So I was like, well, I could just convert my script to that. So I did that, and lo and behold, that was a lot of work, took a long time. And I'd only
Okay.
do a little bit. I didn't do it all at once. I'd do like 20 pages and send it to Monica because it would take a whole afternoon to do like 20 pages. It's like thumbnailing, but without visuals even. So you have to be even more extra kind of in your head trying to visualize. And then I'm kind of paranoid of like trying to write what I want the angle to be. And then you're worried if like it even makes sense. And that did come up once in a while where Monica would be like, yeah, I don't know if this one even makes sense. I wasn't quite sure. So, because she would then send me thumbnails. Um, and yeah, at first too, I was self-conscious that I was either giving her too much notes and I've, I've had a little process myself with all this because I've worked with some other artists too. And I've had it where I'm like giving too many notes and they say, I actually don't want to work on this anymore. And I'd be
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, sorry. Uh, and then with Monica, I actually asked her at one point because she hadn't drawn animal characters like this before. She'd drawn animals maybe here and there in the background, but not like leading main character animals. So she was
Right.
getting better at it as she went. And I was kind of giving notes. And I think she might have known that and been more open to it. And I was paying a little extra because we were doing some revisions and stuff early in these like first 10 pages or so. But I was a little self conscious about it. And I told her, I was like, if you want to like back out I'm okay with that. Because me too, I'm a little nervous. It's also my first time investing like at least 10 grand into a project, you know?
Yeah, that's a big drop right there.
Yeah, and it's the first time doing it too. So you're just like, oh, this feels like a few years ago, this would have been more money than I make in a year almost, just alone even. And but so then she said, no, I'm into it. Let's stick with it. And I want to get your vision. So let me know what you want. Like she's very professional in that way. Like there can almost be like two kinds of professionals. There's like professionals, they're like, all right, you hire me, then you let me work my magic kind of thing. And then there's
Yeah.
professionals that are like, you hire me and I'm here to help you get your vision on the, and you know, writers, it can go either way, but I think I've gotten to the point now where I can kind of understand that. And I can kind of work with either one, although it would kind of depend on the project. Like if it's a project I know I'm going to be like, it's my baby, I would want to work with like Monica, you know?
Hmm.
Um, whereas if I have one that I can kind of just hand it over, then it can be good to work with both. And Monica can do both too. Um, and yeah, even with her, I learned to trust her more and more as we went, where I would have the script and I would describe kind of less and less, even the angles, and I'd kind of let her. I'd be like, whatever, she's going to do it, and it's going to look great. So, um, it kind of like that might even happen with like any working creative relationship as it goes. You get a little bit more comfortable with each other, able to kind of predict each other a little bit better. You almost get like a shorthand in some ways. So we were starting to get that towards the end. You know, it's 92 pages we did together. It's the first half of the story. And we're going to start on part 2 in a couple months. And then I have one other kind of random script, but I'll mention it, I guess, because it's Mike Murphy, a collaboration with Mike Murphy. You know, he's a good comic
Oh,
skate.
the Forsaken Gods guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it Forsaken Gods? What is it?
Or
No, sorry. That's what is that's Fresher Luke. Mike
Pressure. Oh, that's
Murphy.
right. Right. Mike Murphy.
He the gods fear me, I think.
God. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so he's a great writer too. And we co-wrote this thing together that's like uh, I don't know, it's kind of like it's about like Star Trek behind the scenes if it was ran by a cult kind of. and,
So
and
it's like Scientology, basically, or
yeah, kind of like initiations to even get in the show, blah blah blah, and some like
mm,
interpersonal conflict, and then it follows an episode of the show and some real life stuff at the same time, and they kind of mirror each other, but not in a redundant way, because that could be redundant if it mirrors too much. Almost, I kind of learned as I was writing it. I was like, it's gonna be so cool, it's gonna mirror, and you're like, well, it actually can't really mirror because that would then they'd be watching everything twice, the audience, and that'd be boring. But
yeah,
but it
yeah. There's.
turned out, or sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say you would kind of want them like them to be like one side is like the optimistic side, and the other side is the pessimistic side. Like they comment on each other in some way, like they're
Yeah,
similar but with different outcomes.
they can kind of complete each other, like, or however, yeah, they kind of play
Yeah,
off each
yeah.
other. So we got it a little bit more like that, and yeah, that script I ended up being really happy with it. And it's kind of just sitting there right now, but it's pretty much done. And Monica's going to be perfect for that one. So I already told her, I was like, and I got one more for you too. And she's like, yeah, cool. Whenever we get to it. But it's still, that'll be a year or so off, but another. So I might have 3 books from Monica. I told her it's like, this is our trilogy. We got Cerberus Part 1, Cerberus Part 2, and Eclipse is like the Star Trek one kind of.
Okay. So how long is Cerberus Part One? You said you did about 20 pages in an afternoon. So does that? It's at least 20 pages, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, like I'd format, 20 pages of the script.
Yeah.
Um yeah, it's 92 pages is part
90.
1. And
Okay.
then that gets you halfway through. So part 2 will be it has a little more action, so it'll might be a little bit more pages, but it'll be like 100 to 110, and the whole book's like about 200. And it's kind of like I call them narwhal joints, but these are like they're like Earthbound. Foreign Agent is kind of like this too, where like it's based off more or less a movie script. Reading it pretty much feels like a movie, which sometimes people say that in like a negative way, and I can see that like modern Marvel, if like they're all Netflix pitches or whatever.
Right.
But if your comics kind of like a movie, it still depends if it's like a good movie or a bad movie. Because if it's like a good movie, then you got nothing to worry about really. It's the only thing that when we get really mad and of like people doing that, of making it almost like too cinematic, or it's trying to be a movie when it should be a comic or whatever, is if it's a bad movie.
Right,
Then,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds pretty cool. Anything else you want to say about the project before we wrap up?
No, just thanks for having me. I'm definitely excited to launch it. I've got 500 signups so far, which is the most I've ever gotten on a project. So that's good for me. So hopefully it'll be a successful project, help fund part two. So the business plan's a little bit different because I realize when it's just me, that is its own kind of privilege you can be in as a creator, where you don't have to worry about these big budgets for production because you're all doing it
Right.
yourself. Then it's a lot easier to kind of make your money back and fund the next one. But as soon as you start bringing on collaborators, you want to pay them, and so then you have these numbers you got to hit to break even. And I like that too. And I really like the collaborative process. You and me have collaborated on stuff too. And so I want to keep doing that. But it's interesting to note that it's quite a bit different than what I'm used to.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you got a lot of signups, and hopefully, when this goes live, we'll be able to convince a few more people to drop by and sign up for that. Um, anyway, that's all I've got for people today. Let us know what you think about the project down in the comments. There's a like button and a subscribe button down there. You can use those as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.